K.T. McFarland has been going on my shows a lot in the last couple of days. I think she wrote a book, but she's been, and it just came out maybe. She's been talking about what she went through as being an associate to Michael Flynn and what the FBI did to her. And she said they tried to pull the same thing on her. Just what we talked about last night, how all these people that were associates of Trump's that they got charges on, they got them pretty much almost all of them on process crimes, not real crimes, just like lying. And they did the same thing to her. She said that they did the exact same thing. The FBI came to her when they were going after Flynn and said, yeah, we just want to make sure there's no connection to Russia and stuff. And K.T. McFarland goes, she was at her house by herself, and she goes, oh, should I have a lawyer? Like a lot of the other ones said. And they said, well, if you probably think you don't need a lawyer. We're not the ones to say. And then she talked to him for like 30 hours. They confiscated her email, her records, her calendars, and then they interviewed her for 30 hours over a number of days. And then when she couldn't remember stuff because they badgered her, and like if she'd say something wrong, they basically did what they did to everybody else in this Russia hoax thing. And then they were going to hang paper on her. They were going to get her for all the other, like they've got all the other ones for, well, you said something different 6 months ago. And she said, well, you have all my documents. The long story short, she almost went to prison too. And she said, and she's on 2 of my shows today. And they said, well, what would you suggest to people if the FBI pays you a visit? She said something like, don't say a thing to them. Get a lawyer, don't say a thing. And there's just a lot of stuff. Steve Hilton, who has a program on Fox, he's given Trump advice. He says if President Trump, if he gets a second term like we think he is, he needs to fire them all. He needs to drain the swamp. He needs to close down all these departments. He needs to blow up the bureaucracy and decimate the civil service.
Well, to the extent that he can do these things, of course, if you have political appointees, and the president can do a lot more with those, civil service rules, I'll grant you, need to be changed, but they're going to have to be changed by Congress. And as long as we keep voting the straight paralysis ticket and a split Congress, that's unlikely to change. Yes, K.T. McFarland has a new book out, Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People, and we're going to probably have her on the program here before you know it in the next few days. So we'll work on that as we turn to Sharon in Crane, Missouri on the Bohannon Show. Good evening, Sharon. Welcome.
Hello, Jim. I wouldn't want to be in the Democrat shoes right now because they've got a field of thistles to pick from. Mike Bloomberg, he's got all the money that you could ever want, but you can't buy a personality, and the man doesn't have one. And every time he turns around, he seems to be offending somebody. Elizabeth Warren, she really came out in this last debate, but she comes off sounding like a fishwife sometimes. And, that loses its appeal really, really quick. And Joe Biden, he's just tired. And the other 2 candidates, I don't think it's their time yet. And I don't know what the Democrats are going to do if they don't have any choice but to run Bernie Sanders.
Well, they are in a conundrum whether they run him or not. If they don't run him, they run the risk that his backers, who are a significant part of the Democratic coalition, will decide that he was cheated again, whether he was or not. They'll go home, they'll sit on their hands, they won't vote, or they'll vote for the Green Party. which is the same thing as voting for the Republican, because Green Party votes are what cost Al Gore the election back in the year 2000. But if Bernie is nominated, then you do run the risk of a McGovern-style wipeout. So we'll see. But, of course, a lot has changed between 1972 and today. And that's the big issue in those intervening 48 years, just the extent to which the term socialist is an automatic poison pill. And a lot of young people, they don't know. They're willing to try socialism. So I'm not sure. I know the party apparatus is afraid that Sanders would automatically lose big. I hope that that's true, but I don't know that.
I remember the Democratic Convention in Chicago, and I remember...
You mean the 1968 convention?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, a very liberal town.
Oh, yes.
And I remember how bad it got. I mean, that was when the mass building was blown up and all kinds of things were going on. There are a lot of people in Bernie Sanders' organization and a lot of young people that subscribe to this too. And they have been caught on record and on video saying that they're ready to take to the streets and burn things to the ground.
Or at the very least, they have predicted that with what sounds like a certain amount of wish think involved there. So, yeah, I mean, seriously, you could see something in Milwaukee that we haven't seen really since Chicago of 1968, as you noted. That is to say, sore losers who either we go their way or they take the law into their own hands. That's very possible. I can guarantee you Milwaukee's worried about it.
I bet they are. And like I said, I wouldn't want to be in the Democrats' shoes right now because they are stuck between a rock and a hard place and another hard place. It's going to be real interesting to see what happens in July.
It certainly is. I am looking forward to it, honestly. I really am, because I'm just really curious as to what it is that they finally do, Sharon, and I'm not at all certain what they will do. Again, how far can the Democrats go to work this thing? I mean, they got caught red-handed trying to cheat Bernie Sanders last time. If they try to do him in by breaking the rules, the party is shot for this election. And it looks as though they may be trying to do him in by following the rules, although in one case, of course, allowing him on the debate stage, Bloomberg, that they bent the rules. They dropped the donor requirement. We'll see. More to come. Back in a moment. 6650-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. You think things have been tough being a Republican, being conservative? They have been. The president, of course, has been constantly beleaguered. Anyone associated with him, constantly beleaguered. That's true. And yet, things look better for that side than for the other side. The Democrats are looking at what ought to be, according to their plans, of course, a weakened president who is ripe for the taking. And they are, under that theory, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory so far. Now, maybe the party will rally around a candidate, and maybe they'll come out of Milwaukee unified. Maybe. No signs of that yet. 1-866-50-JIMBO. Let's go to Tex in Dallas. Hi.
Hey, how you doing, Jimbo?
Well, thank you.
Okay, so I got a theory here, and I don't think the Democrats don't pick anybody from the state. They've all been too savaged. I mean, they can't win. So
well, first of all, they can win. We don't know that. There's certainly no way to say they can't win. You've got tens of millions of people who hate the president. They've got a shot.
Well, right, but I think what they're going to do is they're going to just toss them all out. That way the Bernie people don't feel like they got shafted entirely, and then they'll pick somebody new. I mean, fill in the blank.
But how do you toss them all out? I mean, you can't just dump the whole system. I mean, there are going to be people showing up at that convention with delegates, and you can't just.
I don't mean toss them all out literally. What I'm saying is they'll put somebody up, And I think that's how they'll do it. But the second
but
point
the thing is, just to continue that first point, if they're going to, quote, put somebody up, and many would argue that is Bloomberg, now's the time. I mean, you cannot wait till the last minute to do this. You can't assume there'll be a brokered convention when there hasn't been one since 1952. So, I mean, if they're going to put somebody up and it's not Bloomberg, then they'd better do it real fast. But go ahead.
Sure. Obviously, there hadn't been a problem in a party like this since 1952 either. And the second point is, I don't think Bloomberg's running to win. I mean, who want to go through this?
Why would you do it as a hobby? I mean, why else would you run?
Well, because he's a businessman. I think he's there just to make sure the socialists don't get it. Because if they do, they're going to come after 90% of his wealth, and spending $1 billion to make sure they don't get in is a whole lot better than giving them 40 or 50 billion. I wouldn't be surprised to see that because he's already saying stuff like, "Oh, I can't believe this. You people are crazy." I wouldn't be surprised to see him split off to a third party to split the party to make sure that Trump gets reelected again.
Well, now that of course is another logistical problem right there. As you can ask, you could have asked Ross Perot about getting on the ballot. To be a third party, you've got to get on the ballot. And if he were going to do that, he would have had to have made the effort months ago with the petition drives and hiring people to get voter signatures. It is very hard to get on the ballot as a third party. And again, all the money in the world. Ross Perot had billions too, and it was tough for him to get on the ballot. So we'll see. But my thoughts would be that at the moment, pretty much we know who the Democratic nominee is going to be. It's one of those people. It's going to be Sanders or Bloomberg or Biden or Klobuchar or Buttigieg, one of those four. 1-866-50-JIMBO. This is Sid in Cleveland. Hello, Sid.
Jimbo.
Yes, sir.
Number one, let me start this conversation with that. You are a legend. I come home at night after I'm at work and I listen to you. I'm at 11 o'clock at night. You come on WNIR.
WNIR radio. Absolutely. Great station.
You know that. Thank you. Your comments, your previous thing about the black thing was very interesting.
Yeah, that's, I think, the big question of the campaign, and we just don't know yet, but it's a possibility. Go ahead.
No, just the fact that you had that conversation. That's what makes you great.
Thank you.
It really, and whatever. It just was a great conversation. And the calls that came in, I sat and listened to that blah, 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 blah. Let me ask you a question. Are you into sports? I know you are.
Well, it depends. I'm not what you would call an avid fan, but I follow sports.
Okay, you know Cleveland, though, right?
Well, I'm aware that the Browns have not been quite what some people thought they would be under Baker Mayfield. They haven't improved quite as much. I know that the area has a love-hate relationship with LeBron James and things like that. So go ahead.
Oh, no, that wasn't bad. But LeBron James gave us a thing. I'm talking about Francisco Lindor wants $300 million for 10 years. Just real quick, because I have something to talk about Trump, but I want your opinion about that.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know the name.
Francisco Lindor?
Well, I've heard the name. Okay, he's the shortstop. I know for the Indians. But but that's about all. When I say I know he's the shortstop for the Indians. That's about all I know about him. Okay.
He wants $300 million for 10 years, or more than that, maybe $400 million.
Right.
That's kind of the point I'm making.
Okay.
You can look it up after the conversation. I want to talk about Trump.
Okay.
Trump is gonna win landslide.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's early to know.
You always talk over.
Whatever.
Everybody.
Go ahead. It's early to